I guess summer has arrived to Sweden. Du, 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 dun. Du, 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 dun. Du, 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 du. Du, 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 du. Du, 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 du. Du, 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 du. Du, 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 du. I have to do this with this song because YouTube copyright is insane. But I know you understand which song I'm talking about in this episode, which is gonna be about music, but with no music. La 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 la. During a party in the island of Sylt, located on northern Germany, members of the white German upper class were singing a Nazi slogan, and some of them even doing the Sieg Heil to the tune of the 2001 song L'Amour Toujours by the Italian DJ Gigi D'Agostino, replacing the original lyrics of this electronic music song with the chant Germany for the Germans, foreigners out, originated in 19th century and was commonly used by, let's say, the failed Austrian painter with a funny mustache who was directly responsible for the Holocaust and the mass murder and the genocide of other ethnic minorities. Since then, this song has been appropriated by the white supremacist far right, often used as a dog whistle. Is everywhere on social media. While watching this bunch of racist, inbred looking upper class Germans singing a banned Nazi slogan, I took a step back from my anger and disgust and started thinking, what is with white supremacist obsession with appropriating things from other cultures? Because the thing about this song is that it has nothing to do with white supremacy, ethno-nationalism, etc. Regardless of what Gigi D'Agostino's political values are nowadays, the song itself is just a fun, catchy song that was a huge hit back in the early 2000s. I loved that song, and to this day, I still do. If we want to hyper-focus on the song and kind of dissect it, Gigi D'Agostino is an Italian man from southern Italy, and I don't mean to sound like a Swedish race biologist, but I'm pretty sure that if he goes to certain places in Germany or even here in the Nordics, if he doesn't open his mouth and shows his Italian passport, he will be called some very nasty racial slurs. And if we take into consideration the long, complex history of northern versus southern Italy, you could also argue that even in certain parts of northern Italy, he will be called not so nice names. Whiteness is a spectrum. I've made a lot of content explaining this. Go check it out. Go check out my previous episodes. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think. Remember that at the end of each episode, I read some of your comments. So stay tuned. Going back to the episode. Going back to talking about the diversity in the song L'Amour Toujours, the title is French, the DJ is a southern Italian from Campania, the song is in English, and is sung by a black British man from Islington who was born in Nigeria. So yes, the voice you hear in all of the social media videos of the Save Europa guys full of dog whistles, that is the voice of a black British man. The voice you hear in all of these like racist videos of Save Europa, that he's the guy that sings like the super amazing voice that you hear that says, I still believe in your eyes. I just don't care you've done in your life. That is a black British man. The voice of a fascist internet dog whistle is a black British man. Something else I can't stop thinking about. Why are fascists so obsessed with music, food, resources, and cultural expressions that belong to groups who they perceive as inferior? Why do white supremacists love to consume black culture? Because yes, electronic music was created and developed by black people. In this episode, I will be answering these questions and I will also talk a little about gatekeeping. But first, I want to take a small detour and share with you a brief electronic music history lesson. The forgotten real history of electronic music. When we think about electronic music, the first image that comes to mind is white people dancing either in a disco where they happen to have private parties if a non white person tries to enter, or we imagine a concert or festival where the audience wears vibrant and sometimes culturally insensitive costumes, but they're all white. Most of the world's biggest electronic music festivals, such as Tomorrowland and Ultra, take place in Europe and the United States. But to call electronic music white people's music is just a lie. For this section of this episode, I will be using the book Last Night a DJ Saved My Life by Bill Brewster as reference, and I will be using a lot of music design technical terminology, but I promise you it is important and relevant to understanding the bigger picture while at the same time me trying to summarize the history of electronic music as much as I can. Electronic music was invented by black people, including, of course, black, queer, and gay people. The history of electronic music starts in Jamaica, according to most historians. Jamaica producers in the 70s innovated a lot of different ways of using techniques like overdubbing, putting lots of echo on and dropping out a lot of different parts of the beat to create sections with just the bass and the drums, etc., etc. This is called dub. So dub is like the foundation of electronic music. We have big names like King Tubi, one of the inventors of dub. Lee Scratch Perry is another one. He started out as a producer of a lot of important early Bob Marley records, but eventually he became a huge dub innovator. And another aspect that's connected to Jamaican history is when talking about the history of electronic music is the fact that you will get these instrumental versions and dub versions, and you have someone talking over them. This is what's called a DJ in Jamaican music. It's not because the person who flips the records and stuff is a selector, whereas the person who speaks is the DJ. This is, of course, a direct predecessor of hip hop, which is another very important part of the creation of electronic dance music. When we're talking about the history of electronic dance music, a lot of it is in the 70s, like late 70s, early 80s, starting with the creation of hip hop, which is where people would like to put together the breaks from. That's why it's called breakbeat. Hip hop was created as an explicit DJ musical style created by DJs originally and starting in the late early 80s, like a genre called electro. Another DJ is Larry Levin, who basically created and promoted these amazing long complex mixes of electronic disco music. So now we got these two components. You got electro, which comes from hip hop, you've got the dub party, and you've got the disco, and the big next step is house, which was created by black gay DJs like Frankie Knuckles. After house, there's techno, which was invented, of course, by black people. Techno was made in Detroit, technically takes the harder cold sounds of some of electro and again fuses it with how takes inspiration from house. But whereas house quickly moved into a sort of like warm, gospely, piano driven direction or like a very happy, funky direction. And when we're talking about the electronic music community forming outside of Black, Caribbean, African American, and Black British people, for example, in Germany and France, majority of the pioneers, if not all of them, and creators of the electronic music scene in these countries were Black people. The first thing that comes to mind when electronic music is mentioned is that it is white people's music. When you think of a DJ, the first thing you picture is a white guy. Even us black people see it that way. Most people don't know that black people invented electronic music. Was there reciprocity? When these white kids will come to the scene and get inspiration and collaborate with these talented DJs, that's beside the point. The problem is the system that lingers over every relationship we have in society. The completely whitewashing of electronic music is systemic, institutional, and violent. Nowadays, it's kind of extremely hard for Black people to break into the DJ industry. There's a bunch of reasons for this. One reason is as soon as white people get hold of something, they will take over it and use institutional power to kick out the group or groups that originally develop it. Some examples of this are rock music, jazz, tango, cowboy culture, country music, graffiti art, etc., etc. And you might be wondering, Mango, how do they use institutional violence to kick people out? Okay, I'm going to keep it very, very simple. I'm going to explain it to you in simpler terms. Outer group creates something, right? The other, the group that is marginalized, the marginalized community creates something. Then the group that is the inner group, the group that is not the marginalized group, comes and they interact with that creation. Now, people need money to live, people need money to survive. Who are the ones who are getting the jobs? Who are the ones who are getting hired? Who are the ones who are getting the actual like record labels? Who are the ones who have access to the money and resources? Mostly are white people, and white people are going to hire other white people. That's something that also happens in the art world. Like, that happens a lot in the art world too. Let's put it that way. People need money to live. It's capitalism because what is one of the most like malleable things in a capitalist society? The workers. Artists are workers. Creators are workers. But we're going to talk more about that aspect later in this episode. This idea that electronic music in general is white people's music is not just a fun stereotype, but an imposition that is reinforced by violent systemic discrimination and gatekeeping by white people against Black and POC people. I could spend hours talking about how white DJs would straightforwardly steal from Black people, how white people wouldn't pay Black DJs properly, or in some instances, Black DJs wouldn't get paid at all. And this happens to this day all the time. Even if you just want to consume electronic music as a Black person, you're not even welcome in those spaces. It is quite common and well documented instances of Black people excluded from electronic music nightclubs in Europe and in the US, including, of course, here in Sweden. Yes, I have to mention Sweden because I live in Sweden. Fortunately, there's a movement of Black DJs reclaiming electronic music. I strongly recommend you to follow Maldita Vaina on Instagram. They do a lot of cool fusion things, so go check them out. I will read this part verbatim from this article from 2020. Frankie de Kaiser Hutchinson, co-founder of Disc Woman, a New York-based collective and DJ booking agency focusing on DJs of marginalized backgrounds, criticized the lack of diversity at Dekmantel and Awakenings last year, two major rave festivals held in the Netherlands. It's so weak how people would rather blame those who are excluded than actually interrogate how it's fucked up to have a techno festival of over 100 acts with only 5 to 10 Black acts, she tweeted. This is a tale as old as time. Black people create something. White people like it. White people join the scene. Then white people take it thanks to all the institutional power they acquire due to a white supremacist capitalist society. Then white people gatekeep it from Black people. Then white people rewrite history and repeat over and over and over and over and over and over again. Now let's talk about why white supremacists love Black people things. Now that we know an extremely brief and summarized account of the history of electronic music, let's circle back to the questions I'm exploring in this episode. Why are fascists so obsessed with music, food, resources, and cultural expressions that belong to groups that they perceive as inferior? Why do white supremacists love to consume Black culture? The answer are in both the history of electronic music that we just learned and the questions themselves, a product to consume. Bell hooks in Eating the Other, Desire and Resistance explain how commodification of black people as central in the model of production in a white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist society. The commodification of otherness has been so successful because it is offered as a new delight, more intense, more satisfying than normal ways of doing and feeling. Within commodity culture, ethnicity becomes spice, seasoning that can live up the dull dish that is mainstream white culture. If you're a black person in the diaspora, regardless of where you live, you've seen this interaction in real life. Creative white people who feel lost and uninspired coming to black communities to get inspiration, a new perspective, to get something. Even though Bell Hooks speaks from the perspective of black people, I believe that this can also be applied to other communities of color. Let me know in the comments what you think. Certainly, from the standpoint of white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, the hope is that desires from the primitive or fantasies about the other can be continually exploited, that such exploitation will occur in a manner that reinscribes and maintains the status quo. When race and ethnicity become commodified as resources for pleasure, the culture of specific groups as well as the bodies of individuals can be seen as when the race and ethnicity become commodified as resources for pleasure, the culture of specific groups as well as the bodies of individuals can be seen as constituting an alternative playground where members of dominating races, genders, sexual practices affirm their power over in intimate relationships with the other. To see why supremacists consume black and POC culture is not hypocrisy. It is the way the system was built. In the context of imperialism and colonialism, in relation with white supremacy, it is perfectly within the system to see black people as a commodity. Slavery and the exploitation of the global south help and is still helping to build the wealth and bring resources to the global north. Check the British Museum. White supremacists consuming black culture is just them following the hierarchy that they believe the world should live under. Why would white Europeans move to Africa and create an apartheid state? Why would Zionists move to Palestine? Why would German Nazis move to South America? To live their fantasy of having a territory to conquer and a class to oppress, steal from, to erase, and to marginalize. What imperialism and colonialism cannot steal, it will destroy. These processes happen simultaneously. One of the many ways Black and POC people are stripped of their humanity is when they're treated as products and things to be consumed. White supremacists' love for electronic music and a lot of things that come from non white cultures in general is not just hypocrisy. On the contrary, but about perpetuating a hierarchy where stealing all the resources and the labor of a group who you perceive as inferior is the norm. Forget about reading philosophy books and academic articles. Just look around you. Check the news. We're told all the time how we who come from the global south are parasites who are stealing from the poor global north. But not a single corner of the global south is without either a mining company or a multinational business conglomerate from the global north, etc., etc., etc. Even our beaches in the Caribbean are being taken away from us. They manage, like the global north, manage a way to steal the sea. Yes, I am not exaggerating. In the Caribbean, they're still in the sea. Who does that? It is the same principle why some governments would have extremely draconian, fascist, racist migration policies, while at the same time creating exceptions to bring more migrant workers into the country. That's why most of these countries turn a blind eye to the undocumented migrants who work in the farming industries in the European Union and the United States. Why is that? Because they want to extract our resources and knowledge while at the same time denying us of our humanity. Why is that? Because they want to extract our resources and knowledge while at the same time denying us of our humanity. They don't want Black and POC people to just have normal lives, to fall in love, to build families, to be part of the different communities. They just see Black and POC people as objects that deserve no dignity. The same principle of why colonizers love to move to countries where they are the minority, why museums and artistic institutions and the music industry and film industry love stealing our culture. Sorry. They love to use us as inspiration while not recognizing us as subjects, as experts, or just as people who have something to say. Even in the cases where this commodification, this extraction seems as voluntarily, there's also an institutional violence, but it is not perceived as such, not only because of the refusal of understanding these systems of oppression and their material consequences, but also diplomacy and performance are part of this model of violent extraction. As Bell Hooks explains when talking about the film Heart Condition, where a white racist cop who needs a heart transplant gets it from a black man and how his life is enriched because of it. I know, insane. It insists that white male desire must be sustained by the labor, in this case, the heart of a dark other. The fantasy, of course, is that this labor will no longer be extracted via domination, but will be given willingly. Can there be mutual reciprocity among different groups without exploitation? Could there be a real horizontal collaboration among peers who come from different cultural backgrounds? Of course, it can happen, but the trick is to put in the work. According to Bell Hooks, mutual recognition of racism, its impact both on those who are dominated and those who dominate, is the only standpoint that makes possible an encounter between races that is not based on denial and fantasy. It's all about white supremacy. Bell Hooks explains that all these shallow displays of intercultural exchanges and diversity we see don't challenge the status quo because they don't alter the fact that white cultural imperialism and appropriation of black culture maintains white supremacy and is a constant threat to black liberation. The same principle of why some racist white men love Asian women and go to certain countries looking for a perfect wife, why they love Mexican food, halal kebabs, Thai food, while complaining about foreigners taking over, why they would rally against a black professor but have no problems with a black or POC cleaner. The principle is the hierarchy of white supremacy, the system of white supremacy. It is not hypocrisy. It is to maintain a system where people like me are and stay at the bottom. And the reason why most people don't understand that it is not about hypocrisy when white supremacists consume non-white culture is because we have all these liberal institutions spreading misinformation about how white supremacy and racism work because of their commitment to protect not only that system but also others who are extremely intertwined, like imperialism and colonialism. We understand sexism and the patriarchy, at least in a basic sense. We understand that a man can have proximity to women, even craving that proximity, and still hate women, right? Even when you take into consideration the most illogical white supremacist ethno nationalists obsessed with a country of only white, blonde, Nordic, Anglo Saxon people or whatever, they know they still want us as a class to subjugate, enslave, extract resources from, and create wealth from to keep the machine going. It is just classical colonial imperialist conquering, which trickles down to the entitlement we see in the case of white supremacists loving things created by the cultures they perceive as inferior. It is perfectly logical that a song that comes from a black music genre created by a southern Italian man sang by a black British man has been appropriated by white supremacists. Thank you so much for watching and for listening to this episode. And now I will be reading some of your comments that you left on my previous episode, Why White Supremacists Hate White Women. To be honest, any man in some type of cult usually has a hate for women. Yes, 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 yes. That's something I noticed in high school when moving from a brown culture to a white one. If the white classmates, both male and female, thought I was white, they mistreated me way worse than when I was dressing and talking brown. Even when I refused to put up with the crap, all they did was escalate to violence until they realized I would have brown girls, boys, and men in my cousinage to follow through. The only thing they feared was being called racist. That was a very interesting comment. I don't know. People don't care anymore more being called racist, but I guess that was your experience back in high school. Insecurity and narcissism are the two greatest driving forces in misogynistic men. Well, yeah. Um, Sam Levinson clearly cannot conceptualize women outside of sex work because that's the only thing he can write. That said, I'm not really surprised given this show started as a high school drama with zero actors playing teachers. I'm still pirating the show, so here's my hydration game. Played with water, of course. Every time my character says a slur, shout slur and drink. If you see boobs or butts, drink. Finish your glass during the unnecessary sex scenes. If there's a pew pew on screen, drink. If a character wears a wildly inappropriate outfit to something, drink. Double if another character comments on it. Oh my god, that was very, very funny. Racism and sexism are byproducts. The real system is men competing with other men for resources. Every other problem is collateral damage. Children and women are seen as resources, while other men as obstacles. Yes! Oh my God. Exactly. Thank you so much. That's exactly the problem I'm in. Thank you so much for all of your comments. I really appreciate it. Don't forget that I read your comments at the end of every episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram, where I also post a lot of short format content. And subscribe to my Patreon, where I have a lot of exclusive content that you can enjoy while you also support this project. And if you just want to buy me a coffee, I also have a coffee account. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.